TikTok, it's time to rock.
Oh,
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the
look
Sunday
at that.
show. It's my pleasure, as usual and always, to introduce the Sunday team, the number one team. The number one team's here.
The A-team.
The A-team. Brad, good to see you, brother.
Great to see you too. Great, Andrew, Simon. Thanks for, letting me come in just a little bit late today. Thank you for giving me that late mark. It's not a bit late, people. I'm fresh off the plane from Tasmania, so I've just literally raced through the door and I've held you guys up, so I apologise.
Oh, my gosh, it's not quite that bad, but good on you, bro. You've got some stories to tell us about your gig. I just want to remind people, too, if you're watching on a replay, if you haven't checked out Brad on Instagram, please go and follow Brad on Instagram and go and find him on his YouTube channel as well. He's on our channels page, so please go and subscribe to Brad. And you'll see the Rock Professor on the bottom there. On the scrolling banner there is the Rock Professor's Instagram account too. So go and follow us over there and try and let's create some mayhem over there, Simon.
What more mayhem? I get lots of strange requests on my Instagram account from young ladies with no posts, but seemingly I run away from them as fast as my legs will carry me.
Especially those ones that have like a website, link,
Yeah. Whoa, no. Oh dear. I sense nothing but trouble.
I'm staying out of this one.
Yeah, quite right. Yes. Yeah. See, you obviously don't get them, Brad. I'm very upset. Would you follow them all?
No, I don't.
Jay, good to see you, bro. Sorry for interrupting, Brad.
Jay. Evening.
Okay.
That's cool. How you doing? Hope you're well. Hope Ellie's getting better and all that's going well in your world. Good to see you.
Jay, you're a legend. We'll never forget the support that you gave our channel. Bro, if you ever want to come on and hang out with us, with the Rock Professor, Brad and I, you're more than welcome. You have a permanent invitation, brother.
Mm-hmm.
We'll test your knowledge of British electric blues.
Good to see you, bro. Good to see you. But
nice to see you.
So we got a great show lined up, ladies and gentlemen. We want you to hang around and participate with us. I got some messages from some people from the Allman Facebook, Allman Brothers Band 3 Facebook groups that we're members of. Got some messages from at least 7 or 8 messages from people saying that they're going to be tuning in. So I don't know what that means, whether they're going to tune in live, Rock Professor, or they'll watch later. But we'll be keeping an eye on the chat, and we welcome any participation from those Facebook groups.
Oh, 100%.
That's fantastic. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm enjoying the fun, and as Andrew says, once you become subscribe to our channel and you hang out with us, you're always welcome to come on and talk about the Allman Brothers or whatever you want to do.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Brad, what were you doing in Tasmania, bro?
Live, our correspondent live from Tasmania.
Yes. I was I had a gig on down in a place called Mole Creek, which is a Mole Creek Hotel. It's a lovely little place in Tasmania. Flew into Launceston, and then a 30-40 minute drive from there.
Is it Brad? Is it called Launceston? There is it.
Launceston, yeah.
I'll tell you why, because there's a small town down on the way to Cornwall here, which is called Launceston.
Oh,
you see, we wouldn't pronounce it Launceston like that. It's just pronounced. In fact, if you come from Launceston, it's Launceston. I don't even pronounce the T. Yeah, but how funny that's funny. That's
my
work has a depot there.
It's definitely a place within its own, Launceston in Tasmania. It's a very isolated place. So yeah, flew in there, had a festival we were playing at, and there were 6 bands on the night, which was all the bands were great. The entertainment was fantastic. The people were lovely, very lovely, friendly people. The age bracket were, a lot of probably the same age bracket that watch us here, and our age bracket on the show. So everyone really appreciates live music down there. The tickets weren't cheap for the punters, but they came down. They braved it. It rained. It must have rained. I think about just 10 minutes before we went on stage, it bucketed down like. So it's an outdoor event. It's not indoors, obviously. So everyone's weathering the storm, so to speak, and they put up with it. And we went on stage. Our power tripped about 5 times because of the circuit breakers.
Really? Oh,
yep.
That's exciting.
So it was a bit nerve-wracking, I must say, playing gigs where your power keeps tripping because the electricity box or whatever is full of water. So that's always a bit of a worry, but that's what the venues have public liability insurance for, I guess. And it was a lovely gig. Just like I said, I literally flew back to Melbourne today and raced through the door, made myself a nice hot cuppa, and joined you lovely gentlemen. There was a wonderful a wonderful band on that played that headlined the show. They were called Killer Queen, and the gentlemen, lovely guys. I met them all. The guitarist was, doing his best. Brian May did a great job. The band were very tight, and the singer, his name's John Blunt, and he is a spitting image of Freddie Mercury. It was a bit freaky, actually. Now I thought to myself, I have to get a photo with him and show my son because my son won't believe it. So I don't know if you can see this, Andrew, but this guy.
Hold on. Wow.
Yeah.
So the band's called Killer Queen, and I highly recommend you go check them out. Very nice guys. Very nice guys.
Awesome. Yeah. Two birthday shout outs on the channel, guys. We want to do a shout out to Jimmy V from the 5150 show, who joins us with John Conklin on a infrequent time schedule, Simon. But happy birthday, Jimmy.
Jim, yeah.
Happy birthday.
And Spanish Ricky Spanish wants us to do a shout out to his brother Nicky Gurr. So Nick Gurr,
happy birthday. Birthday. Yes.
We'll do it, honestly. No worries. But I particularly like, Brad, to go back to your gig, that Brad went live from the side of the stage, and there were a good crowd there and everything. But the band were doing Bohemian Rhapsody, and then all of a sudden they all went off, and about 45 seconds later they came back on again. It was like, okay, why have they all gone off? Why have they come back 45 seconds later?
The crowd
were good though. Yeah, it was good.
The crowd was very good. I won't. I was on stage, and there's a couple of songs where I don't play a lot of guitar in, so I managed to get my camera and film a couple of things. So I don't know if I play the music, it might flag it, Andrew, won't it? If I actually play that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we should skip that because of the. Hold on, bro.
I'll just show it's muted. I'll just show the crowd so people can see. So
wow.
Look at that. And the walkway too. Look at that. Did you wander out on that, Brad, and give them some 6-string heaven?
I did. I walked out there during Sharp Dressed Man, and I think Sweet Child of Mine and Rebel Yell. So yeah. So there you go.
Cool. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
Nice little outdoor festival. Great, lovely people, and what can I say? I'm a very grateful man to be able to still be out there playing after everything that's happened over the last 12 months. It's been great to get back out there and play. Fantastic.
Well, I think it's it's reminded people, hasn't it, to that to get out there and go and see the people you like, go and have some fun.
That's it. Go see live bands, people. That's what we're here for, music, and keep music alive. Go bands. Get off your devices at the end of the day and go watch a band like that night. That's what you need.
I just want somebody in the future to film Brad as he comes out and does his Leonard Skinner, moment, and film that for us so that we can present it here.
What exactly is this Leonard Skinner moment?
I don't know. I'm scared. I'm scared, Simon.
It's the Freebird. It's Freebird, and it's famous. And they've got the front section of the stage, and it's like about 20 feet out in the front, and then the band walks out slowly during the solo.
Yeah, I know.
Who's the guitar player? He's playing an Explorer. Alan, the young guy that passed away.
Alan. Oh God. You see, I can't remember his name. Gary Rossington's the other one, isn't he?
Yeah, I saw that too. Chris was at some gigs last night. Good thing about Chris is he always shares his live concert bits and pieces live too. Always fantastic to see. Brad's right. Go and see live music.
And the Rival Collins. The Rival Sons, they're one of my son's favourite bands. He loves them. Yeah, that's great that you're going to watch them. My son would be very jealous to watch him.
Hey, Todd. Good to see you, brother.
Yeah. Morning, Todd. How you doing? Great show the other night. Fantastic. Really good fun.
Alan Collins. Todd. Yep,
Alan
Todd is right.
Thank you, Todd.
Please, guys, while we're here and Todd is in the chat, can you hit his subscribe button and subscribe to his channel, please? Do us a favor. We want to help Todd build his social media platforms, and if you guys can do that, that'll be great. The Rock Professor's got some other information to share with you guys, and then he's going to do a shout out, and I suppose we better kick the show off.
Yeah. I've got a couple of things. The first thing is, this is what Mr. Walt does on it when he's not on the show. Look who he's hanging out with there.
Joe Bonamassa and just that bass player that plays with that guy called Eric. What's his, just some random dude
Nathan somebody. Anyway. Hope he never watches that. That's disgraceful.
You got caught out, Andrew, that you're moonlighting and gigging with Joe Bonamassa. You're not telling us.
Clearly not. But don't worry, we find him on Twitter. There he is.
You got to learn one thing in this day and age, Andrew. You can't hide a single thing. Social media.
His Panama hat. I thought that was great. That made me laugh, and I thought, what's Andrew doing? Moonlighting with Joe Bonamassa.
I'm just getting some great guests for our shows, for our channel. That's all.
Well, there we are. So, ladies and gentlemen, are we announcing officially that next week's guest is?
No, nothing like that.
We're not doing that. No.
Not yet. Anyway, it may come. Who knows?
You will. Yeah.
You know what they say, Brad? If you build it, they will come.
They will come. Oh. My recollection is that's a baseball stadium.
You build it, they will come.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
My Lord.
The other thing I discovered this week, that as it's a part of our channel, we've got over 150 of Peter Green's guitars are up for sale at Bonham's in June. So if you've got a few extra pounds of cash that you want to invest in something interesting, you can invest in. They haven't said what they all are, but there's going to be a Gretsch White Falcon for sale and a 1999 custom shop Strat in seafoam green.
Wow.
Valued at only about £8,000 and £6,000 respectively.
Oh, wow.
So quite a lot of things. There's the 20th anniversary Squire Strat, a national dual-in stylo resonator from 1931. So some other bits, and also some handwritten lyrics of the Green Man Elise sheet and things. A Man of the World, sorry, handwritten by Green. So if you've got between £40,000 and £60,000, you can bid on those.
Well, we'll pull that money together, guys, and we'll go.
Yeah.
What do you reckon?
We'll buy a tuner.
There's one guitar that I really, really want. I just don't think even the three of us could get our hands on, even if we could. I don't think we can have enough money between us to even get close.
Sadly not. Yes, that's not included.
We couldn't even
in the
get
sale,
a sniff of it. We couldn't get a sniff of it for the money that we can raise.
Well, you
the
never
millions
know.
that we're earning from YouTube. Yes.
Kurt Hammett might, take pity on us and let it go for a measly amount. Won't you, Kurt?
A paltry sum.
Yeah. Come on, Mr. Hammett.
Yeah, you know you want to. You
That's
don't
right.
need it, do you? God, I mean, what is he doing with it?
Make sure you send it to the British Electric Blues office in Australia, please. All
right. Via the British Electric Blues show office in the UK. And so I'll say hi to everyone in the chat. That's right, and we can see we can start. So good morning to Ellen. So morning, Ellen. Christopher, live sour. Morning, Christopher. Hugh Caldwell. Morning, Hugh. He's up early like me. Yes. Jay, of course. Thanks, Jay, for dropping by. Tim Thomas. Morning, Tim. Holly Lewis. Morning, Holly. From Tulsa, Oklahoma. Don't know what it's like there. Dark. Arvin. Good morning, Arvin. Hope you're well. Good to see you. Ricky Spanish as well. We had dropping by. That's really cool. We've not seen you before, Ricky. So welcome to Todd. Welcome, Todd. Nice to see you again after a Friday night's triumph. Fantastic. It was really good. So if you haven't seen that show, check it out. That was lots of fun. Lots of fun to be had there. Gretch Zeppelin. Morning, Gretch. God, I don't want to miss anybody. That would be terrible, wouldn't it? And a bloke called Brad Cook. So good morning, Brad. New person in the chat.
Time that dude out.
Yeah, time mate. Can't. He's got a wrench. Dear. So hopefully I got everyone. Welcome everyone. Good to see you all. Thanks for joining.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So folks, we're ranking obviously, as the screen card says, and we've been promoting for a while, the Allman Brothers. There it is there. Now it's interesting because in the course of my research, I've always called it Live at Fillmore, but it's called at Fillmore East. But
it is,
in the course of the show, if any of the hosts, including myself, refer to it Live at Fillmore or whatever, please just let us know that we're not.
I'm always inclined to put a "the" in.
Yeah, me too.
Article. Yeah.
So just wanted to remind people about that. And we're doing 2 shows, mainly because we just wanted to have a bit of a jam session here where we can share a little bit of the information that the co-hosts have picked up, have more of an introduction, more of a general chat about this album. So we're going to spread it over 2 shows. Only because of my preference for this album, Simon and Brad, and Dwayne Allman's significance, and we've linked Dwayne Allman, haven't we, into other albums that we've done, most particular the Layla album, where he was a ingredient in the success of that album. And we always said, didn't we, that we were going to do this album at some stage. So, for me, I think that's always the key. And talking, Simon, about the background, what was leading up to this album. I know that you've done a bit of research. and also the significance of this album and what it means not only for obviously the major players in the music industry, Brad, but just guys like us, fans over the years. How has that influenced your playing as a Les Paul player? So I'd be interested to hear that. Do you want to? I'll get you to kick off, Brad. Do you want to talk about your first experiences with this album? Then I'll get the Rock Professor, and then I'll talk about mine, and then we'll do a quick intro and see what happens. What do you reckon?
Sounds great.
Cool.
Sounds great. Well, for me, this album in particular, I came into the Allman Brothers a bit later. Obviously, big fan of Clapton and the Layla and Assorted Other Love Songs album. And that, obviously, not knowing at first, thinking it was all Eric Clapton on that album, I didn't realize, I had no real knowledge of what happened for the recording of that album. But then obviously discovering that the slide playing was predominantly Dane Allman. So my ears pricked up, because I've always thought the slide playing on, especially the title track Layla, is absolutely outstanding. Some of the best slide playing that I've ever heard. So for me, I went back and started investigating the Allman Brothers. I think I'm not sure which album I got first now. It was more like a compilation, I believe I purchased. It was a compilation. And then I ended up getting my hands on this live album on CD. I haven't got the deluxe package one. I just bought the standard package. It was an old CD from a secondhand CD store I went into back in the 90s, by the way. It was just, when I was buying CDs quite predominantly. And I was obviously taken in by Dane Allman. It's like my fascination with other players. I've never tried to cop them, but I've just always loved their playing, to the point where at times it's nice to not try and copy and play like certain people, because it's nice to have something fresh to listen to. But I feel like every time I listen to him soloing, it sounds like it's very refreshing, because he's so fluid and liquid-like with that slide. I don't know if you guys picked that up, but a lot of slide players, they seem to find the note, and they move the slide back and forwards around the note. He's very fluid leading up to it, and just his, for lack of better ways of putting it, his vibrato is very fluid with his slide. And I find that I get lost listening to him play, especially. I mean, it's great when he's playing over the top of stuff and he's playing a slide, but then when he breaks into a solo, it's almost like another thing altogether. It's like a train on the tracks. It's off the rails, but it's still going in the right direction, and it comes back on the tracks at the end of the solo. It's unexpected with what direction he's going. He's not predictable, but you sort of know where he's going straight away. It's just, I can't describe exactly what it is about his playing that I find so fascinating, but it's definitely probably one of, if not the greatest slide guitar players that I've ever heard, without a doubt. And obviously the Allman Brothers for me is all about, and I know that they're all great players, Dickie Betts, they're all great players, but for me, it's all about Dane Allman, Greg Allman as well, but the Dane Allman is just amazing.
Yeah, I agree. For me too. Initially, it was always Dwayne Allman, and then later on, it became Dickie Betts and Dickie Betts, and I'll tell you why after the Rock Professor tells us how he came across this album. He probably lined up and bought it.
I didn't quite. It was before I started buying records. I didn't start buying records till about 72, and this came out a year before. But I did get it in the early 70s. I don't know, 72, 73, because it was just it was instantly one of those classic records that everyone had. Live at Fillmore, it's seemingly, where I'm standing, was always a classic album. And as I said, I probably bought it a couple of years later. So but even then, a couple of years later, it was a classic record, and it was viewed as a classic record, and it was viewed, as being one of the apexes of live records as well, as really capturing the essence of the band, doing what they did best, which is play live. A thing that I think a lot of those bands at that time did. The Grateful Dead are another great example of a band that never quite caught it in the studio in the way that they caught it live, and spent years struggling, lots of albums, kind of trying to work out how that would work, and eventually, there are just lots of Grateful Dead live albums on there, and which they figured out that was a thing. It's it's but I a bit like Hugh. I saw Hugh. This is not the original copy. I mean, I had an original copy, but long gone, sadly. So this is a more recent version of it. But it's always been around in my life. I think that's, as you say, Brad, that Dwayne's his slide playing. It's got a mix, got that classic. It's technically brilliant. He's always hitting the right things. It's tremendously soulful. There's a lot of feel in the playing, and also you get a feeling that he's, we talk about this quite a lot on here, that he's going for it. He's not afraid of making a mistake. He's not afraid of not quite, because of what he's going for. What's in his head, and the translation to his fingers, what he hears, and the way he plays. And I love people who do that. It's because it's not worked out. It's coming straight from his soul and straight out through his fingers. And I think that kind of, I find that very attractive, that kind of going for it, thing where I don't even care if I make a mistake. It's just part of it. It's just on the way to the right note, kind of thing. And it doesn't matter. I find that enormously attractive. And I think that's really good. He's clearly an amazing player, and was always an amazing player for his short life. Picked it up, and had some that affinity with slide that few people have really in that way. Got his own style. Was clearly a great guitar player, rhythm guitar player. And all the other bits as well. It was a very complete guitarist. I think that's really important to say that. And I think, but also, as you've alluded to, the rest of the band, Dickie Betts, no slouch with a guitar. I mean, absolutely not. And I think that that possibly it's one of those, great player in his own right, but overshadowed by the genius of Dwayne Allman. And I think that's quite tricky, probably. Maybe not, maybe good, maybe tricky. I don't know, but I just feel like he's slightly in Dwayne's shadow a bit, but unfairly so, because I think some of his stuff on this record is exemplary and it's fantastic as well.
Yeah,
I think Barry Oakley's bass player is a great bass player, knows when to hold it down and knows when to let it get on it, kind of thing, drive it along. So I think the whole band, Johansson on drums, and Butch Trucks on drums, fantastically driving rhythm section, give it tremendous bottom end power. And of course Greg Allman, great singer, and great organ playing as well, just keeping it steady until he needs to have a little solo or do something, but so I think that kind of coming together of all those talents in that, and coalescing in that one band for that pretty short period of time was pretty amazing. But in those in the context of the times, maybe not so amazing, because lots of bands were like that. Lots of bands, the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, the Zeitgeist are bringing 4 people, 6, what was it, 5, 6 people together, and for that to gel, and for that to the focus is it musically is quite amazing, really. And I think it's this is one of those very, very great records that is, it's a particular thing, but what it does, it is the best of what it does. That kind of musical exploration, which I've always found really attractive. I mean, I'm not saying playing style, but in that kind of attitude, I think, that I have the same regard for Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin as I do for this sort of thing, for that regard of going for it, and that kind of, that musical exploration, wanting to expand the borders of everything you do and everything you play. It's just amazing, really. And I still get such a thrill out of listening to it all these years later. 50 years later, 52 years later.
Awesome.
Amazing. So yeah, sorry, I had a long-winded.
No, it's good.
From me. But,
great.
Yeah, I'm going to tag on to what Brad said. I became aware of Duane Allman after I did some research when I became a Clapton nut and trying to work out who was playing on this album, Layla, that we've ranked here on the channel, ladies and gentlemen. We'll attach those links if you want to go and find out what we've said about that great album. And this wasn't when I was a young fellow hanging out with guys, beginning my musical career. This was later on, Brad. I reckon this would have been in the early 90s or mid 1990s when I first, became of this band, the Allman Brothers. Now, again, we've got to remember we've always had rock and roll radio here in this country, in New Zealand, believe it or not. So I was familiar, Simon, with Jessica and Rambling Man. You're familiar with the name Allman Brothers. Greg Allman, you're familiar with him because he married this woman called Cher. So there was these popular cultural references. So you knew who it was, but I wasn't listening to any of it. And it wasn't until a friend of mine, would have been a work colleague, I suppose, said you need to go and buy this CD. If you're listening to rock and roll and you're listening to Clapton, go and get this live CD. I went and did it, and like a lot of us, blown away by it because we hadn't heard anything like that before. And I just want to make a little point here, and we can talk about this a little bit more when we go into the songs. And the rock professor just touched on it a little bit too. Duane Allman's slide playing was uniquely different from everything else that I was listening to. He was muting the strings and just playing one string at a time. And you can hear that, whereas Jeremy Spencer, who I was familiar with in Fleetwood Mac, was playing the whole strings in open E tuning. So, you weren't getting that delicate note difference. You were getting a cacophony of notes from Jeremy. Great slide player, but just a different technique. So when you listen to that, it's okay. So you kind of build some kind of mental bridges in your mind about what Duane's trying to do. So it sort of kind of grew from there, Simon. And then obviously, you're looking at the cover. The rock professor's got the album too. You're looking at this great cover of these long-haired guys. Yeah, I'll present the rock professor. We're all familiar with the cover.
That way. There we go.
You're sitting there. So do you guys know why they're smiling? Do you know why they're smiling? If you turn it back around, Simon?
Go on.
Okay, so that's early in the morning. And they've got them there for the photo shoot. And they didn't particularly, like most rock bands, wanted to get up early in the morning. So Duane sees someone that he knows is a dealer. So he runs up. So these guys are sitting there. So Duane runs up to the guy, grabs his bag of contraband, and he stashes it between his legs. So he's sitting there with the bag of whatever between his legs, and the rest of the band are laughing. So
there we go.
Yeah.
You'll notice that they're all laughing, and then on the back, the road crew all have beer.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Iconic thing, isn't it? An iconic sleeve. That, no mistake in it. Nothing like that at all. Brilliant.
None at all.
And of course,
sorry, Simon.
No, I was going to I was going to say, of course, done at there. It's not done at the Fillmore, is it? It's not photographed at the Fillmore.
No,
it's done at their practice facility in wherever it was. I don't know, but.
I have to agree, Andrew, what you said about his slide technique. And one thing I want to elaborate on what you were mentioning, how he played single note stuff. A lot of that stems from his ability to vocalize what he was playing on guitar. It sounds like a vocal line more than a guitar line. That's what I think I was trying to say earlier on. As his vibrato, the way he plays with the slide, he makes it sound like someone singing, which is quite a unique technique. And it's been copied since Dane Allman, but I don't think anyone had really done it that way before that, with the slide, of course.
Correct. And if you want a perfect example of what Brad is saying, go and listen to the isolated slide tracks of Layla in particular, and just listen to some of the notes that Dwayne's playing on that track. You don't quite get that on this album because this album is a live album. So, but if you want to, hear those notes, which are impossible notes, that Layla,
you can listen to the isolated tracks, can't you?
Yeah. It's phenomenal.
And it's an amazing live album. This too, guys. It's captured such an amazing performance, but the production of it is great too. And obviously, the producer of the album was none other than Tom Dowd, who did Layla and other assorted love songs. So that within itself, I'm sure you're going to mention all that in your introduction there, Andrew. So I don't want to steal your thunder.
No. Well, let's talk about Dowd, because I think one of the interesting things about Dowd, and again, it will come through when we rank the songs, ladies and gentlemen. The great thing about Dowd is he knew exactly what this band was. Hence, and the rock professors will probably back us up with this, hence Tom Dowd's adamant confrontation with Dwayne Allman to say, get rid of the three-piece horns. You don't need the horns. You need to make a rock and roll album, and having horns on this album won't work. And it'll become apparent on the third song. One person stayed after the rest of these other musicians that were going to come in were kicked out. Simon, smart move.
No, well, I think you're right that there are 2 or 3 key decisions made, aren't there, by Tom Dowd about this record that make it brilliant. That's certainly one of them. Absolutely. Can't realize that he couldn't cut the horns out of the mix because there's so much bleed, because it's live, that he couldn't. So they had to go, and I think that's from a producer's point of view. That's what a producer does, as you say. What is the essence of the band? It's not those guys playing the horns, sadly. So they have to go, and pretty much the harmonica player is on one track, I think, maybe not, from memory. So, really got rid of the superfluous musicians, completely superfluous, and, stuck with that core 6-member band and what they did. And I think that's an absolutely key producer's decision on this record. I think the other one was one of the other ones was to say to them before the last concert, "We've got everything, boys. We're fine," And I think that's then they went out and did a kind of incendiary final set without the pressure of recording, which clearly he was still recording it. And quite a lot of the songs we're going to rank come from that, where they're much more relaxed because they're not recording, so there's not that self-conscious thing about it.
And it's smart move from the manager. And somewhere in my notes, we'll get the person's name, the manager, because the manager again is a crucial ingredient component to the success of this album, because he started Capricorn Records.
Oh, Phil Warden.
That's correct. That's it, Phil. He started it specifically for this live album. So we're going to do a shared introduction, ladies and gentlemen. So this is their third album. following 2 studio albums, but their first live album. And the manager knew that this band wasn't a studio 3-minute, 4-minute song band. That the strength of this band laid in its ability to produce these longer songs, and obviously took that punt, argued it like heck against Rexler, didn't he? Rexler, apparently, from the research that I have done, was adamant from his point of view that they shouldn't do this live album, for a band that's only put out 2 studio albums. But again, the manager in cahoots with Tom Dowd, Simon, said, look, you know what we're going to do? We'll go out there and we'll tell the guys we've got everything. We'll go.
And we haven't. But
and
absolutely think that's one of the key decisions for this record as well. Is that? But
again, I'm going to just share some screenshots with you for some of the reference material that I've got, because for a long time there wasn't any information about this band. Now there's a couple of books. There's this great book here that just came out last year called Play All Night by Bob Beatty. Go and check that out. That's available on Kindle, ladies and gentlemen. There's also this one here too, One Way Out, the inside story of the Allman Brothers, and it's a collection of what other people are saying about the band. Really, really great read. And also this book here, Skydog, the Dwayne Allman story. Go and check that out. Great material about this band. And so I said to you guys before when we were talking a little bit earlier, one of the reasons why I love the material that's coming out now, Simon, I didn't know when I first heard this album, who was playing what. I knew there were 2 guitar players, but I didn't know who was playing what and where was playing what. It wasn't until, you could watch the video footage, which became apparent on YouTube, where you can see that. And now it's documented. And we'll talk about that when we go through the songs, if you guys yourselves aren't familiar with who's playing what on what song. So we'll share that with you. The Cheats Guide. The Cheats Guide to Live at Fillmore.
I think I can work it out. We'll see if I'm right.
Well, that's good. I can too, but on my initial listen, I couldn't. What about you, Brad? Clearly the slide. There were some parts of the slide.
Yeah, clearly, but I think also the panning. I think from memory, forgive me if I'm incorrect, but one side like 45 degrees or maybe a little bit more on one side is Dane Allman, and then the opposite side is
left and right. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So I think that's how I identified who's who. But obviously, a lot of the slide playing, it's Dane straight off the bat. So
correct. So, and we'll share that with you too, ladies and gentlemen. So, yeah. I think we've pretty well covered the intro. We've mentioned that it's their their 3rd album, released on July the 6th in 1971. Went on, Simon, to be a pretty significant album. It wasn't an album that was slowly gaining traction. It went on and became an instantly recognizable album.
Yep.
So close to being a teenager when it came out, me. Just a few days. But
yes.
Yeah.
It's a great live record, a great live blues record, and I think someone in the chat mentioned that's a great first live jam band, and I would have to agree that I think it's got all the elements of all the rock and the blues that led up to that point, but they've gone with it, and the way the band performed together was just impeccably well. So tight, it's like they knew cohesively what each member was going to do as well. If you're listening to some of the jam sections. It's what I call jam sections are the extended solos and everything. It's if you've been in a band before, for musicians that understand this, when you're in a band, that a lot of the musicians are quite used to improvising. It takes a certain something to actually pick up that they're not going to stop. They're going to keep going, and you've got to be there to hold them up. You can't just pull away and stop what you're doing and bring the song back. You've got to support them, and you can't expect someone, for example, like Dane Allman, to be turning around and saying, 2 more bars or three more turnarounds of this blues progression. You can't expect that. You've got to be able to just listen and watch what's going on. And I talk about chemistry in bands a lot on this show with like Zeppelin and this and that. Like for these guys, there was a chemistry going on. They knew what was going on. They could tell when each player was wrapping up their improvised section and moving on to what the next person was going to be doing. I found that was on this listen, because in all honesty, I've never really listened to this album like I've been under the microscope with it before. It's always been I've just put it on and listened to it and thoroughly enjoyed it. But because we're doing these shows, I thought I've got to really put my microscope on this and check it out.
Yeah.
You can really hear when the band are acknowledging that someone, like say for example, we'll get to when we get to the track listings and we're doing the rankings, but there's particular songs where they're stretching out solos, and you can tell the band's on the edge of their seat. Are we ending this turnaround? No, we're going to keep going, and they do, and they fall straight away. So there was no little kerfuffles. There was no one coming off the rails. Everyone stayed on the tracks, and it's just a credit to the band. I think a band like the Allman Brothers had to do a live record. I think it's very important that they did this live record to show their fans that hadn't seen them live that they were a lot more of a live act than probably a recording act. That's just what I took in from listening to this album through again.
Yeah, I think I'd like to pick up on one thing, Andrew, you said. To me, looking back at it then, they are that kind of improvisational thing is in the wake of the Grateful Dead. I'm going to tip my hat to. I think the Grateful Dead sort of, that they started in the mid '60s. But 67, they're in the middle of the psychedelic era, and they're already doing the stretching out, the long solos, the kind of longer tracks, and that not being able to pin it down in the studio in the way they could and things. So I think the Grateful Dead are the great pioneers of this musical exploration genre in a way. If there's a genre called musical exploration, that probably isn't. There is now. I've just made it up. But I think that they deserve the credit, and I think that the Allman Brothers are taking. It's part of that sign, the times bit, and clearly other bands are doing it. Led Zeppelin, were coming on at the same time. But I think that Dwayne Allman and stuff, spent time in, on the West Coast, so would have picked up on all of that. Probably went to see the Grateful Dead, and I think that that they are the great leaders of this in my books. I don't know, maybe some other people around at the same time, but they feel like they're the great leaders of it, the Grateful Dead, and this comes off the back of that. So there is a kind of very loose kind of framework of people doing extended solos, doing extended songs, 15, 20, 25 minutes, songs, and ways, and it's very much, this album reminds me quite a lot of of the Led Zeppelin stuff that we've in kind of in the way that they do it, not the playing and stuff. They don't sound like that, but that there's a certain element of of structure and working out and working out how to I mean, it's interesting, and I read somewhere that somebody described them as a jam band, and they said, we're not a jam band, we're a band who jams. And I think that's quite a crucial difference between the two things. So clearly, and I've read some other bits, I think where the structure of things is worked out, and then you're saying, well, you're going to improvise this bit, improvise this, we're going to do this, but it has a framework to it that is that is adhered to, kind of thing.
Well, yeah,
in the same way as Led Zeppelin do.
and Bobby Whitlock discusses that for us on his channel, where he talks about, don't be fooled into thinking that the Allman Brothers were quote unquote a jam band. They were very much a band that had a lot of the stuff, a lot of their elements worked out. It goes back to Dwayne Allman's time being a studio musician, a session musician, where everything was worked out and done on time. And, Bobby Whitlock himself talks about it, that Dwayne Allman, they played a couple of gigs live and Dwayne couldn't improvise to the ability that these other guys were improvising because he hadn't worked it out. Now, that's no disrespect to Dwayne Allman as a musician or a guitar player. It's just that the approach that he had to it was a little bit different from the Derek and the Dominoes guys. So I think we've got to be careful. And the books that I've referenced here, ladies and gentlemen, go to some point in discussing that this idea of jam band isn't, where you just get together, Simon, and just go for it.
That's not it at all.
No. No.
And I wonder if I don't think that a band, and as we get more into these things, it becomes clear to me that it can't just be like that. It can't just be a free for all, can it? It can't, there has to be some kind of structure in which you have whole sections where you're improvising. Clearly, you're playing, so we're going right. We're gonna play, DGD or whatever, or DGE, or whatever the chords are, and so you've got a framework in which then to play, and that's not just, that's not get together and just saying, oh, right, okay, somebody play something and we'll join in kind of thing. I don't think I think it clearly has to be more structured than that. Otherwise, you're never going to get away with it, are you?
Yeah. And Dwayne himself talks about it himself also. He spoke about how the significance of the rest of the band members was the way that they sounded. When Barry came on, ex-guitar player, playing bass, and his approach to the bass was completely different to everyone else that he'd played with. He just had a different tone, Brad. So, that's going to attract you as a guitar player. Well, I can work with this guy, he was using his ears and building this band. And remember this, ladies and gentlemen, Dwayne Allman built this band. He picked every musician in this band was picked by him.
Over a period.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important thing to say, Andrew. I do, that he clearly had some kind of vision about what it was going to be and how it was going to work, and went around until he found the right people, And of course, the last piece of the puzzle is Greg, isn't it? You come and sing, said Big Brother. Okay, boss.
Do we want to talk about the significance of this being Dwayne's last album, even though he was on tracks on Eat a Peach?
Yeah, because they can go
on. I suppose the significance for this album, ladies and gentlemen, too, is that it's the last full album, the full project of the Allman Brothers that Dwayne Allman had complete, certainly 90% creative control over. So, from that perspective, Brad, it's got to be a testament to him and his legacy as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I agree 100%. I mean, he had a vision. He went, like you guys have elaborated on, and after his session work, he's created and formed a band with his vision. This was his last album that he had full, I guess, creative control over. Andrew, would you say that? Is that what you're... Yeah. So, yeah, I reckon that makes it even more special.
Awesome. So what we're going to do, folks, is we'll throw up a couple of pics for you to have a look at, and this is the show card that we've done. And as the rock professor said, he sat and used to look at that album cover many times and wonder what was between Dwayne Allman's legs. Now he knows.
Things I've never done. One. Wondered what. I don't dare say this, really. I've never wondered what's between. And you see what you're making me do? You're making me go there. I'm not doing it.
What I've done, ladies and gentlemen, is I've just cropped some pics of Dwayne Allman's style there, and we're just going to share those, and you can see what he's done there with his glass slide, where he situates that. I'm not a great slide player. I've tried playing Dwayne's style. When I play my slide, I keep my slide on my pinky finger. But I've got to tell you, if you do want to try and pull off Statesboro Blues intro, you got to at least put the slide on that finger. It does sound better. It does sound better, Simon. You've got more control of the slide on that finger.
There's also a thing, isn't there, Andrew, about the slide should only come down to the second knuckle and not
Correct.
right down your finger. That's a thing as well, isn't it? I read recently. Seriously, I only read that recently. I'm so up on things. All things guitar. I'm so up on it. Look at that. But
and there he is playing an SG.
Sure, that's not Derek Trucks.
No.
I'm joking. It's an SG and a slide. Synonymous, isn't it, with Derek Trucks?
Again, another pick of Dwayne playing. That's that guitar he's playing, ladies and gentlemen, is the guitar called Hot Lanta, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Look at the way his hands are delicately lifted off the fretboard there, guys, and see how the slide is just balanced on there, just dancing above the string.
Do you suggest he might be doing a bit of vibrato at that point?
Bro, gotta be.
Yeah.
No.
But it also says that the kind of delicacy, there absolutely is that delicacy in his playing, isn't it? It's not power, it's delicacy and accuracy and feel.
There's a pic of the famous
There it is.
cold mixture. So do we want to talk about that story about how he was suffering? This is Dwayne Allman. So, ladies and gentlemen, he was suffering from the flu. Greg and Dwayne, as I understand, had an argument. So Dwayne, Greg goes over and sees him and drops off some cough medicine for him and probably something else, some other product.
Medicinal, purely medicinal.
Purely medicinal. And, it's a great story, isn't it? Half an hour later, Dwayne Allman is ringing Greg saying to him, come back, come and check this out. He's been putting that on the finger, Brad, on the finger, and he's learnt within 30 minutes how to play slide.
I wish it was that easy for all of us mere mortals.
Well, I think we should say that he learned how to. I think there went on after that quite a lot of perfecting the technique.
Okay.
And things. Yeah. I don't think, from what I've read, I think that this, yes, it could easily get the impression that 30 minutes later he was playing like Dwayne Allman on live at Fillmore. I don't think that's quite the case. I think there's a little more practice and a little more study went into it after that. And I think my understanding was, Andrew, maybe you're wrong, correct me, is that the Corsedin bottle used as a slide he'd already started playing slide before that, because he already had some knowledge of slide, but he hadn't found the bottle bit which suited him. Apparently it fitted him perfectly on his third finger. That particular bottle and his finger were just it was all the right size. So, but my understanding is that he'd started playing slide before that. I could be wrong, but because he'd heard this record. Have you heard? Let's see. Been doing my research. You got this record? Got this record?
Taj Mahal's, yeah.
The first Taj Mahal record with the great Jesse Edwin Davis on it. Slide play, fantastic slide play, which apparently he was one of his influences. But yeah.
So well, that's exactly what he was doing. So he was listening to the album, suffering from the cold, and he had the slide on. So those were the three ingredients. But clearly, Brad, being a studio musician, he knew some parts, knew how the slide worked, and from what I understand, he'd been using steel slides and stuff like that, and the bottleneck slides, which were quite thick. But yeah, as the rock professor said, the uniqueness in the cold mixture bottle was the thinness and that tone, which freaked him out. And then he got his brother, and his brother said, "Oh my gosh, yeah, that sounds great. Let's go." So the rest is history. Again, that's not Derek Trucks.
Sorry, just being facetious as usual. You know me.
That's Dwayne in the studio now. He's playing his gold top Les Paul there that he sold. And just to give you guys a bit of background, so that's Butch Trucks and Jimo, the two drummers, and we'll talk a little bit more about them. One of the best bass players in the world.
Mm.
Yeah. Fitted in perfectly, didn't he, into the band? Perfectly.
There he is there too. Dickie Betts.
Dapper is the word I'm going for.
Greg Allman playing the guitar.
Yeah.
And what do we got there? That's Dwayne and Dickie on stage.
Very cool.
Back, Simon, and we love saying this, back when a rock concert was an event. I'm not saying that they are not events now, but the significance, I think, for the music that we love talking about, there was something special about these moments in the late 60s, early 70s, Brad.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely. I think part of that is that, in a sense, it's the mystery of it. Back in those days, you bought an album, Taj Mahal or whatever it is, it's like, I wonder what that is, and it's a cool image. You think, I wonder what, you don't really have any idea about who they are. You don't have an idea about their background. You don't, you get this, you see a band with a load of, cases outside somewhere, long-haired guys, but what do they sound like? What are they like? And it becomes a kind of intrigue thing, doesn't it? That you might read something about them in the press, but there's no, there's no Wikipedia, there's no social media, there's no, every single minute of their lives, in those days, I was there, none of their lives were in the public eye, really. You didn't have no idea who Dwayne Allman really was, didn't know any history about him, all you had was the music, and when people came, and I've just talked about this a lot, when people came to your town, you went to see them, and half of that is going to see, I wonder what they look like in real life, wonder what they sound like in real life, what do these records sound like, and what other songs have they got? Because if you bought one out, you didn't know what any of the other albums sounded like, you didn't necessarily know they had other albums, unless you found them in a record shop. But I think that kind of, that kind of mystique, mystery, it's amazing, really. That but I think it makes for those sort of things being an event. All those early concerts that I remember going to, because they were events. I can remember, sitting in the stalls at the Colston Hall, butterflies in the stomach, waiting for, I don't know, Rory Gallagher, Status Quo, Richard Thompson, whoever, Queen, whoever you've got, coming onto that stage, there's 2,000 people there, whatever it is, it was a thrill, a complete thrill, wondering what you were going to get, because you had no idea, nobody, there was no sort of, what set lists are they playing, are they going to play your favourite song, are Queen going to play Seven Seas of Rye, or are they not, it's like, and you just didn't know until the end about whether they were going to do it at all.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
These days you can look up online what the last set list was from their last show, and You can look up like set list for the last 10 shows of the one band that's leading up to the show you got tickets for to see what songs are going to play. You know, it's a different world we live in. 100%.
Yeah. You know, whereas, you know, you wouldn't have known half of what they were going to play. You know, I mean, literally, you had no idea whether they, you know, you went to see the Allman Brothers. Are they going to play Whipping Post? Probably, but you know, I don't think there was any guarantees necessarily. You know that they would or they wouldn't.
Well, I reckon they might.
Yeah, well, that's it. You know, speculation in the rear stalls was rife, but you know, I miss, you know, personally, I miss that kind of stuff. Really, you know, I think that being able to watch it all on YouTube, you know, kind of takes away the mystique of, you know, those sorts of gigs. You can imagine buying a ticket, you know, queuing up. Could I say queuing up to buy a ticket to the Fillmore East? You know, it probably cost, I don't know, $1 or something. You know, queuing up to get the tickets. You know, or going down there and buying one on the door. You could probably do that as well. You know, you might not have got the great seats, but you know, turning up, you know, and all, it all helps, doesn't it? You know, I mean, I've talked a lot about this, you know, camping out all night to buy Led Zeppelin tickets, you know, versus going on Ticketmaster. Let me tell you, there's, you know, Ticketmaster, there is no mystique. There is no, you know, push a few buttons, enter your credit card. Whereas if you got to camp out all night outside Virgin Records in Bristol to buy tickets, you know, that to me is, you know, that's cool and exciting and gives it a kind of momentum and a, you know, an excitement building that I think is sadly missing these days.
And just one other note, folks, before we start kicking off the ranking of the tracks. We're doing the first 3 tracks tonight, this morning, wherever you are in the world. A couple of things. If you're watching on a replay, please give us your feedback. If we get anything wrong, I'm not pretending to be an Allman Brothers fanatic fan that knows everything. So if any of us get anything wrong, please correct us and help us with any of the information that we're going to give across. We're just fans. Got to put that out there.
It's a two-way communication. Absolutely, you know.
Yeah, we're just fans hanging out and just sharing what we're picking up over the years. Yeah. I think there's one other person that we need to talk about too that's really important in the ingredient of the Allman Brothers and this album and the mystique of the Allman Brothers moving forward over time, and that's Bill Graham, you know, with the Fillmore East. Now, the Fillmore East, if you don't know, ladies and gentlemen, was a ballroom, a theatre in New York, and it closed down not long after this gig. So, again, another reason why, Brad, this album is so important, because it caught a band, Simon, that was on fire in a venue that Dickie Betts himself said we wanted to play at, even if they only paid us $1,250 between us. we would have played there for nothing, Simon.
Yeah, interestingly, it closed on the 27th of June, 1971. So it must have closed pretty much almost straight after the recording of this album.
Yeah, pretty much so. But interesting, though, from the band's perspective and the manager's perspective, you know, how playing at a venue and where you played in the States at this time was always an important decision, Brad, you know, that you did, you know. Look at the bands that regretted not playing at Woodstock over the years.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And think of the acts that have played at Fillmore. You know, I mean, one of my favourite live records, Band of Gypsies.
Rest my case closed.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You got it. You got it, bro. You got it. One of the temples of rock and roll. Yeah. So, you know, Bill Graham certainly deserves some credit in being a component of this album's ongoing, enduring success too. We haven't timed the Rock Professor out, anybody, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to let you know that there's only 2 scores for me. on every single track. It's either one or the other. Okay, it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy what's going to be.
What, 10 or 1?
Where are you? We can't see you.
I know, I'm just sorting out something a second. Won't be a sec.
Okay, no
Well, I am
problem. We'll
listening.
wait for you.
I'm still listening.
Okay, all right.
It's like he's a private investigator now, working for, internet people.
Look, I've really enjoyed sharing this introduction with you guys too. It's fantastic, and it's an album that I have a lot of personal connection with. So I'll be interested in hearing what Brad has to say, ladies and gentlemen, because he's been listening to it as a background in his catalogue, as opposed to me over the years, who has been trying to dissect it. So that's going to be interesting too, bro. It's going to be very interesting. So
yeah.
And the Rock Professor's perspective too, as usual, ladies and gentlemen, will always be interesting.
Very insightful. Yeah, well, to be honest with you, I don't dissect these albums that we rank until it comes to the point where we go, we're going to rank such and such album, and then I go, okay, now I have to dissect it.
Correct.
So, to actually, but I haven't listened to this album for a long time either, so it was good to sit back, have a listen, and start the process of ranking this, which has been great.
Because of this.
What was that?
Because of this, bro, I've ordered the 2014, the 365-minute CD box set, because I just want to have that all. I just want to have it all, bro. So I've ordered that. Luckily, we're not ranking that.
It's very dangerous when these bands keep putting out box sets that are, they've got all this expanded material. It makes you have to rush out and buy it, even if you can't. You're not budgeting for it, and you're trying not to buy anything, and all of a sudden something comes out. It's like, my goodness, now I'm going to go spend the money to get it, because that's how important it is to us, Andrew. This stuff, it's like it's something that it's like in your DNA. It's part of who you are.
Yeah, and the good thing too, ladies and gentlemen, as Brad said, a lot of the stuff that we rank and talk about is on Spotify too. So if you don't want to go out and get the vinyl or get the CDs or the CD box set, it's always good to stream it on what your streaming services are. That's always a good thing too. The Rock Professor is back, ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry, I was just moving my car because my wife wants to get. Typical real life interfering. You don't want to hear me revving my car with the radio on and shit going on.
Actually, we would have really thoroughly enjoyed if you'd taken us out for a ride, Simon.
Take you for a ride on a weekly basis.
Take us for a ride. Show us around the local jaunts, Maybe that's
the local countryside.
Andrew, the Rock Professor's tour of, and he takes us in the car.
What, my local village? It's not very exciting. There's no blue plaques or anything like that.
Okay.
Oh, dear.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've been going for an hour and 40 minutes, one of the longest introductions we've ever done. We knew it was going to be a little bit of a marathon talking about this, because, it's an important album, and I really appreciate Simon and Brad's contributions. But everyone else is in the chat too. Holly, Alan, Hugh, everyone's going crazy with their comments. Tim, and then all the way up. So thank you for hanging out with us. We're going to kick off the rankings here. So obviously, the first thing that you hear, ladies and gentlemen, when you drop the needle, when you press play or whatever, is the announcer saying, "Okay, the Allman Brothers band." And as soon as the announcer says that, Brad, the band just kicks in. A little bit of background on this first number. It was a song written and recorded by a dude called Blind Willie McTowell back in 1928. And the Allman Brothers version of this song is a close copy of the Rock Professor's album there. that I'm going to highlight for you. So it's inspired by Taj Mahal's version, and it was the song reportedly that Dwayne learnt to play his slide on. Anyway, so getting back to the Allman Brothers and their version, boy, there's an absolute truckload of electricity on their version of this song. And nothing that they've done on this song on previous versions or versions after, in my opinion, comes anywhere near the power that the band captured with this song on this opening track. And if you ever wanted to know why Dwayne Allman wanted two drummers, it becomes clearly apparent, doesn't it, Simon, on this track? You can hear each drummer through the stereo on your ears. Flawless interplay, Brad, between them. Frankly, it's incredible, the interplay between the drummers.
Yeah.
You get Dwayne's slide intro into the vocals, and you can hear Dwayne's slide guitar respond to every line of Greg's singing of his lyrics, which is just wonderful. It's a wonderful experience. It's one of the great things, one of the great pleasures I've ever listened to in my life. Then after the second verse, Dwayne takes his first solo at Fillmore East. And ladies and gentlemen, from that moment on, there's absolutely no turning back. If you ever wanted to know who was in charge of this band over the course of the previous two studio albums, and a lot of people did, a lot of people thought maybe it was Greg Allman was the band leader. No, this clearly, after this song, in my opinion, made it very clear that Dwayne Allman was the band leader. Right. So you got Greg, and then Greg comes back in on the third verse, and this is when Dickie takes his turn and is in the spotlight after the third verse. And then on the fourth verse, we get Dwayne coming back in on the slide. And then once again, it's the accompaniment of Greg's slide, of Dwayne's slide with Greg's vocals. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Dwayne's slide with Greg's vocals, all these names. that gives, frankly, for me, the chills. It's just perfect. It's magic for me. And then the song, obviously, Brad, ends with the thunderous applause, and clearly the band understands and knows exactly what they've been presented with, Simon. They know that they're going to be in for a treat. They appreciate exactly everything that's been presented to them in that short song. They're a respectful audience, and they're going to give, obviously, that power and that energy back to the Allman Brothers, and I think they take that and they kick off beyond any doubt. I can't do anything other than a Brad score. There's only two scores I'm going to give, ladies and gentlemen. Look, I could talk about this for ages and ages, but I'm going to pass it on to Brad and then the Rock Professor. Brad score, great opening track, love it. Brad.
Wow. I mean, what a I don't think that's the most descriptive song ranking you've ever done, Andrew, and I don't even know how to follow that. So no, well done. Look, it's funny because you mentioned earlier, Andrew, that the power of this performance that they captured here, and I have to agree. I think that they captured something here that not many bands are able to do on their best nights, but these guys did it. And what can I say? It's got that great up-tempo blues feel. I love that opening slide section from Dane Norman. The vamping organ, I love that as well. I'm trying to just pick out the pieces here, Andrew, that I'm not doubling up on what you've said out of my ranking. The drummers, they're just so tight and locked in, and there's that infectious bass line that's keeping it all tight together. It's unbelievable. Vocals are just fantastic on this song. Actually, really great vocals. The guitar solos by both guitar players, as you said, Andrew, they're outstanding. And there's that interplay between the vocals and Dane Allman, which I've also noted here. And I have to say, when you're putting together a track listing for a live performance, and you really want to come out with it and capture the audience immediately with something really powerful and really full on, just so that and I don't mean full on as in too overpowering, but you want to suck them in from the first note onwards, in my opinion.
Sure.
What's the point of doing a performance where it takes 2-3 songs before you pull them in? You want to pull them in from the start, and then you keep them there in the palm of your hand the whole time. Now, this performance, they kept them in the palm of their hand, I'm sure, for the rest of the night after this song. But the highlight on this track for me is Dane Allman's slide playing overall. I had to give it a 10 out of 10. It's a 100 out of 10. It's never a skip for me, this one. Simon.
Wonderful. Bye-bye, Holly.
Cheers, Holly. Take care. Thanks for dropping by. Going to have a sleep. Yeah, I don't have much to add. I think a couple of small things that I think that, and we've talked a bit about the drumming. I think that they provide a great swing to this track. Has a lot of swing to it, and that's really cool. And I think that it's in keeping with a lot of gigs from this era where you open with a cover version. You open with a kind of standard, and I guess a lot of the people who here would know Statesboro Blues, because it's done by Elmore James. A lot of people would have known that. Therefore, opening with pretty, as you've said, Andrew, pretty short, focused number. Certainly signpost your way into the gig, what you're going to get, but is probably familiar to people as well. And I think that it's I can remember quite a lot of bands would do that. You would open with something pretty familiar to the audience, whether it was one of your own songs or not. But that's what you would do, to draw people in. And I think it's important, when looking at the track listings and the way that the album runs. I'm always conscious of the way they're put together and programmed, and I think that it's important to understand that from a band point of view. I mean, I don't have anything else to add, in terms of the playing and in terms of the great singing from Greg Allman. I think that clearly on this track and lots of the other ones, he's mainly just filling out the sound on his organ. There's not a lot of flash in the organ, but it fills out the sound, gives it 2 guitars and organ is a big sound, and come to that. 100 out of 10 for me, never a skip. It's a fantastic opening to the album. We can't go anywhere. I agree with you. You can't really go anywhere else with that sort of opening. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. It's sharp, tight, fantastic playing, and says this is the Allman Brothers, and wouldn't be wrong, would it?
No. Great contributions there, ladies and gentlemen, from the co-hosts, and I'm just reading everyone else's comments here. Alan has got a great comment there. Upbeat sound, touch of New Orleans. Yep, and that becomes more apparent later on too. So just hold that thought too, Alan. The second number is, I love the way that Dwayne introduces this. Somebody done somebody wrong. So I love that, Brad. It's just one of those great song intros.
Makes you smile, doesn't it?
It sure does. So just bear with me here a little bit, ladies and gentlemen, with my intro on this, because again, this is a very, very clever, significant thing by Dwayne Allman, what he's done here. And so he's picked an Elmore James song, which is really, really important, because he's discovering this through the interaction and listening through the British guys a couple of years beforehand. And we'll talk about this in our conclusion later on, where the Allmans are as far as saving blues and blues rock and roll, whether or not they did, or were they one of the main catalysts in that, or solely responsible for it. That's going to be a great debate and discussion. But one of the interesting things about Dwayne Allman is that he did not pick a song like Dust My Broom that everybody knew. He had to pick. He knew that he was picking a Elmore James song. Needed to, because of the technique that he was doing. But he picked a song that wasn't covered by, for example, when we mentioned this in the intro, by Jeremy Spencer, for example, in Fleetwood Mac, who has done Dust My Broom many times. And again, I want to make this apparent to you. Elmore James in himself as a musician is very, very clever, because how many times has he reinvented songs, Simon, over the years when he was playing with the same intro, and the different lyrics and maybe a bit of a different bridge. He's reinvented Dust My Broom half a dozen times. Jeremy Spencer locked onto that and did that himself when he was in Fleetwood Mac. Dwayne Allman's listening to Fleetwood Mac, ladies and gentlemen. He knows what Fleetwood Mac are doing, so he does a complete reversal and says, okay, I'm going to go and pick this other song and link back to Dwayne. All these names in my head. And link back to Elmore James. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. After the first two verses, Simon, this is when we get, can I pronounce his name properly? Tom Duche? Is that how you pronounce the harmonica player?
Beautifully done.
Tom Duche. Okay, so he's the sole survivor from the original collection of additional musicians that Dwayne Allman wanted to bring on, including the three-piece band, and we spoke about that in the introduction. And, it's a wonderful result of the collaboration between Dwayne and Dowd that they got rid of the horn section. I'm just reading my notes here. They're all over the place. Bear with me, please, ladies and gentlemen. And after the first harp solo...
Good morning to Great Vanzini. Hey, Great Vanzini. Good to see you, man.
Thank you. So after the first harp solo, we get pure Betts. Now, this is where Dickie Betts comes into play, if you weren't aware of it, for 24 bars of Dickie Betts magic. And then on the third verse, we get Dwayne with his solo, weaving into Greg's vocals again throughout the lyrics. Notice the theme there? Notice the theme between Dwayne and Greg's lyrics, and how Dwayne is playing his slide as opposed to just soloing. He's playing his slide as a voice in conjunction with Greg's lyrics. I think it's wonderful, and we could talk more about that. And then out of nowhere, Brad, the band breaks out of a shuffle into this dual lead guitar attack, which is just phenomenal. And then obviously it culminates again with Dwayne doing this wonderful slide over the top of the lyrics. Again, for me, this is a 10 out of 10. It's never a skip. Just a wonderful, wonderful example, again, of a band on fire. Brad.
Simon, it's very difficult to follow Andrew on this episode, isn't it?
I was thinking that. I think I'm just going to say I agree with him. that one. Pick the bones out of that. Yes.
I think I've highlighted a lot of what you've already said, Andrew. So without doubling up on it, I'll just touch on the things that aren't necessarily doubling up on what you've done. I love that slide guitar section at the intro over the stabbing progression, like the very intro, the way they do those stabbing accents. I'll put it that way. The band is absolutely cooking on fire during this whole song. Some great vocals. Like you mentioned, the unison guitar parts. I don't want to elaborate too much more than what you already have there, Andrew, but that was a highlight for me. And then there's the trading solos. You almost expect a blues band in this era to do trading solos between two guitar players, but I mean, let's put it this way. When you've got a blues band or a blues rock band, there's two guitar players in it that play a lead guitar. You almost expect the trade-off solos, and it gets a little bit predictable. But I have to say, with these guys, it's not predictable because you don't know where it's going, and it feels like, and you guys may have mentioned in this that they were very structured and they knew what they were doing, but it feels like they were stretching themselves a little bit more than probably the band rehearsed. That's what it feels like to me. So there's this like little bit of anticipation going on there, which creates that magic, in my opinion. So that trading off solo section is one of my favorites on the record. I love it. And there's obviously a wonderful respect and chemistry between the guitar players on this song, and it's highlighted there. Dane Allman, his slide playing is outstanding again, and it's like they've captured another magic performance. It's like, I know they recorded this over a period of, what was it, 3 days, 3 performances, guys? Was it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I'm wondering. I'm after hearing this track, like the second track in, I'm wondering how difficult it would have been for them to pick what songs were actually going to go on the albums. Because if all the performances were as good as this one, it would have been a very hard one to go, well, let's put the second show from that date on that. How they compiled these live performances on these, I don't know, because if they're all as good as this quality performance, it would have been a very hard feat to pick just one performance in the song. Wonderful version of the song as well. I gave it 10 out of 10. It's never a skip for me, Simon.
No, I agree. I don't have really much to say about that. I think you've picked out the things that I definitely would have picked out of those things. I think that I'd say that it's interesting that the first 2 tracks are pretty short, pretty tight. Clearly, I don't know whether it's sequenced the same way as they actually played. I haven't looked, to be honest, but I ought to check it out. But it feels like you've got these short, fairly concise numbers at the beginning. You're the band are easing themselves into it. You're not just starting off with a 20-minute thing. You've got to ease your way into, and you've picked a couple of blues, standards written by other people. I think that's quite cool. And I think, clearly, if you're talking about programming again, that's, you can see where they're going with this. And, you want something to loosen up to, don't you? You want a couple of numbers to loosen up to, get into it, get the vibe, get the juices flowing. And I think that these first 2 tracks do exactly that. I think the other thing I made a note of was that on these first 2 tracks, the drums and the bass are kind of just laying down the rhythm. There's nothing particularly flash about it, nothing particularly, they're just laying it down. Again, just kind of creating a bedrock over which the soloist can play. And I think that's important for the band. Later on, things go a bit differently. But right now, it's all kind of, that rhythm section is being a rhythm section, being solid, not flash, not going for it at all, just kind of laying it down. Boys, we're good. Here's the foundation. Showcase, and I, hats off to that. 2 drummers, as you've said, but playing in unison with 2 drummers is very difficult, and they do it really well. And I think providing that basis for these first 2 numbers is really important to the band. It shouldn't be overlooked what they do. 10 out of 10 for me. Never a skip. Fantastic.
Okay, I'm just going to do a bit of a conclusion on this song, on this number, ladies and gentlemen. Just bear with me.
Well done.
Just bear with me. There's a couple of things that, and they're more questions actually than conclusions for my co-hosts. So is this the beginning? There's two parts to the conclusion. Is this the beginning of the American twin lead guitars? Is this we got it with Fleetwood Mac on them play on? We're not talking about 2 guitar players, because a lot of bands have a rhythm and a lead guitar. Is this the beginning of the 2 lead guitar players that went on and inspired the bands Simon and Brad in the 70s, Aerosmith, for example. Before you guys answer that, and I just want to throw another little bit in too that the rock professor mentioned. The first song, it's a blues song, 3 chords. Simon's right. The Statesboro Blues was the first bass song that I learnt to play bass on in G. So it's simple in the sense that it's only 3 chords. Dinky Dawson said one thing, Simon and Brad, in his book. He said a reason why a lot of these bands played short numbers is because you got to let the audience take the drugs, and then the longer numbers come on later on when they're tripping out. So that's, I don't know if that's true, but that's Dinky Dawson's theory, Brad. So, Brad, and then Simon, I'm going to get you to answer the question. Is this the beginning of the American? And people in the chat, put your comments in. Is this the beginning of the 2 twin lead guitars?
I'd have to agree with you. I think it is. I can't think of another band around that time frame that had the dual lead guitar thing, the dual lead guitar assault going on. Obviously, Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac.
They're English, yeah.
The UK equivalent. Yep. But this is, I guess, their answer to that, maybe. Their answer to Fleetwood Mac would be, well, here's the American version, boys. But it's a very good observation because I've never really thought about it, Andrew. So that's it's a good comparison there. And I dare say it would have been a first American band, yes. Simon, what do you think?
I'm going to disagree. I think the first great. I think the Grateful Dead. I think the Grateful Dead with Jerry Garcia and Bob Weir. I think that's they are doing it before the Allman Brothers. Myself, I think that twin lead guitar playing. I think that they are. I said it earlier. They're the pioneers. I think they're pioneers in quite a lot of things, and in this time, and that thing about blues as well. So that would be my answer to that. I mean, clearly that the Allman Brothers took it on and made it their own. I mean, I think they're the slide and the not slide bit is clearly unique to them. I think Dwayne playing pretty much slide, and Dickie Betts not playing slide. I think that's pretty unique. But I think in terms of twin guitar playing like that, my vote is going to and Todd B makes a really good point. Mike Bloomfield and Elvin Bishop on Paul Butterfield's blues band, East West, things like that. There's a certain
and we know
there's some of that.
And we know who they were inspired by the British acts.
Yeah, see, by Eric. But I think
good point,
Todd. That's a really good shout for somebody else who was doing it too. That two guitars thing. So that would be rather controversially. Apologies, Andrew. That would be my answer.
It was a question.
No.
Yeah, wasn't a statement.
don't like to cross the boss.
No, it was a question. It was a question. I'd certainly say from a commercial sense, maybe from a commercial sense there was some kind of significance there. Not discounting though the commercial significance that Mike Bloomfield had too. So yeah, interesting. Maybe we should do a show on this. But I thought it'd be interesting to ask that question. Certainly significant for me anyway, listening to that twin lead playing. It's just, wow, Dickie Betts. And we're going to talk more about Dickie Betts because Dickie Betts gets better and better on this album, doesn't he, Simon? So, but we won't talk about that. That'll be next week. Yeah. The last track, ladies and gentlemen, that we're going to talk about tonight, and that's what side are we doing? So the 3 tracks are on side 1, Simon, and then the next.
They are.
Is that correct? We've done side 1.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
correct.
No, we get one more track, but we're only doing side 1 today, which has the next track, Stormy Monday, and then side 2 has You Don't Love Me, which is the whole of side 2. Yeah.
So we're doing side 1, which is pretty cool. Okay, so folks, after 2 rockers, can we say rockers? Are we allowed to say rockers? Are they 2 rockers? 2 upbeat tempo songs, Brad. Things start to slow down, and we get once again Dwayne Allman interacting with the audience, Brad. Clearly he loves doing that. Clearly he's talking about his songs, making sure that people are getting some kind of intellectual understanding of where at least the song wants to go, Simon. Some kind of, is it intellectual? Some kind of conscious understanding before the band presents the music. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So and I love him for that. I think it's a great thing. So just bear with me because he says, while we're doing that blues thing, we're going to play this old Bobby Bland song for you. And then he adds, actually, it's a T-Bone Walker song. And you'd expect him, being the great blues man that he is himself, that he's both correct on both counts. T-Bone Walker recorded Stormy Monday back in 48. Bobby Bland did this cover in 62. And just incidentally, Brad and Simon, I want to tell you guys, I discovered on Amazon Prime there's a Bobby Bland documentary. Go and check it out if you guys have an Amazon. It's not a historical documentary. It's about him, Simon, playing today and how what he does and where he's going, and it's phenomenal. Anyway, sorry, I digress. Thank you for allowing me to do that.
That's never happened before.
Okay. There is absolutely no doubt, though, that this is the best version, in my opinion, the Allman's version. It's a song that they made their own. And Dwayne, right from the start, and then Dickie comes in and joins the band and the intro. It's just phenomenal. Then after Greg's 3 verses, we get Dwayne and Dickie trading blues licks. Brad, it's just again that twin guitar thing. Brilliant. It's amazing. And then Dwayne takes the solo. Greg comes in on the organ. And this is the first time, Simon, this is the first time on the album we get Greg Allman playing his Hammond.
Yeah.
And isn't it phenomenal? Isn't it great? You know, the rock professor mentioned that there were bits of it, you know, in the first song. There's a little bit of it tingling underneath, but now we finally get it. It's phenomenal, in my opinion. And then we get the sense, don't we, of this jazz up-tempo rhythm shift. It's remarkable. Then Dickie comes in again, and then we get Tom Duche's harp work, just adding that little bit of spice on it. I love it. That harmonica solo on the live version. Now, this is where, because this album is completely live, the harmonica solo, from the research that I've done on the other version, on the fuller version, goes on for 1 minute and 30 seconds. Tom Dowd realised that this was the best version, Simon, of the song. So what he did is he just snipped 1 minute 30 off the harmonica solo, and you can't pick it up. I can't hear it because Dowd understood clearly this song needed to be on the album. And because of that, the guy's a genius. I can't detect it. Brad, 10 out of 10.
Yeah. I love this song, Stormy Monday, and I think this is a fantastic version. And I have to agree, Andrew, I think it's almost my favourite version of this song ever. It's a great version. The Allman Brothers have made it their own to an extent, and I do believe I've come up with a description for what I believe is their style of on this. And I'm going to run it by you, gentlemen. I've put very moody, brooding blues.
Yep.
So there's that
Yeah.
moody, brooding feel about it, and just some fantastic jamming going on in this as well. Some amazing playing. There's some fantastic singing in this. Greg's singing fantastically. The Dane's solo is outstanding, and then you've got he's so emotional, and the vocal thing that I came up with before when he's playing that slide and the way he does it, it's almost like someone is singing, like an operatic type singer is singing. So in my opinion, he sounds like he's trying to be a vocalist that's playing slide guitar. That's how I put it. It's very emotional. Then we get Dickie's solo, which is also fantastic. He's a great player. And then we're treated to a fantastic organ solo from Greg. And it's like you mentioned, and I love how the timing of the song changes to like a jazz type thing. It's almost like a shuffly jazz thing. It's remarkable what they've done with it. And then obviously on the other side of that, then there's another guitar solo, and I think it's Dickie. Is that Dickie after the? Yep. I put on there great harmonica solo, fitted well. So I wasn't sure about that cropping of the solo there that you mentioned either, Andrew. So I thought maybe that there was a crop somewhere there, but it's not very clear that whether it is or not. So, but look, for me, it's a 10 out of 10. It's never a skip, and it's a wonderful version of the song, Simon.
So before the Rock Professor, I just want to add one thing that's come into my mind. I think it's better for us to go and listen to the fuller versions of these songs, which are available on Spotify, CD or LP now, than it is, Simon, for us to wonder what it would have sounded like with the three-piece band. You know, I don't listen to any of these songs and think, oh, what would it sound like with a three-piece horn section?
That's a good point.
Well, and I think that's the point, isn't it? The point is that Tom Dowd was right. You know, you don't even think about there being a horn section on it, do you? You don't think there should be or anything like that. You know, it's just it's perfect as it is with the six-piece and everything. So, a couple of things from me. Track 3, first track in 6/8 time. So it's it's the other two 4/4. These are this is 6/8. So you're changing the rhythm to suit, give you a different rhythmic vibe. Yes, Hugh, absolutely. I also think that whilst it's a blues song, it's got that kind of jazz influence chords, especially in that run up.
Yeah.
That you get it's a bit more, and they're not straightforward major chords. There's some, some different voices going on in there, which I think is important signpost for what comes later. I think, there's a bit more of that jazz influence thing going on that I think is interesting. It's the first chance, clearly, that they have a chance to kind of stretch out 8.5 minutes long as a track, and everybody's in the swing, everybody's playing beautifully. Can't add any more to what you said about the solos and things. The other thing I'd say about it is that still the bass and the drums are still pretty steady. Still pretty steady. Just keep holding down the bottom end, holding down the rhythm section, and doing a really good job for that platform for them all to solo off it. And the fact that they're all soloing one after the other, it's quite a jazz thing as well, isn't it? Clearly picked up from the jazz thing, and we can get more into that as we go into the album. But it's a fantastic version of it. It's got tremendous soulful singing, and emotional playing from all of them. It's a fantastic 10 out of 10 from me. Never a skip. As I say, a contrast to the end side one, and I think that's really cool myself.
And just to conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to pinch an observation from Randy Poe from his book. I wish I could say it was my own, but but I've got to give credit where credit's due. He makes a point about Tom Dowd and the editing, Simon, of the harmonica to that short piece.
Yep.
Being fundamental to this album being based around guitars. This album, you know, as much as, you know, it's a band, you know, with, you know, but he clearly, Tom Dowd, genius, clearly understood where the significance of this band lay. And for this song to have that power that we're just talking about, Hugh saying it's one of the best blues performances of all time. So you know, and that's significant because of the guitars, Brad, in my opinion. Tom Dowd, masterpiece. What a genius.
Yeah, absolutely. The core six musicians, they are the ones on, you know, that are really on this album and really make it. And you're absolutely right. And that's Tom Dowd, isn't it? That's his decision is, you know, yeah, all right, I'll leave a bit of carp on a couple of tracks, but actually it's the six of them doing what they do. And none of, you know, cutting out the you know, the superfluous stuff, really. You know, and that's, if you want to know what a producer does, that's one of the things they do.
Oh, yeah, it's just phenomenal. You know, it's become apparent to me, guys, you know, since we've been doing this channel together, you know, when we talk about these albums and then you do some research and you read some biographies and some books and then you realize, oh my gosh, you know, this guy sitting in this control room, Brad, you know, this team of people, you know, are crucial to the success and failure of the project. You know, it's just remarkable.
Yeah.
And guys, credit to us because we talk about that. We bring that up, don't we?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So blistering opening side one of you know me, it's records.
3 songs.
Tracks.
One.
Thank you. It is a great book, Todd, and one of the great things about, you know, the the journalism and the authorship that we get these days. We're getting some pretty good stuff, Simon and Brad, coming through, as we know. So it's just finding time to read this shit.
Busy lives,
It's wonderful having books in your collection. It's hard to find time to read the damn things when you
I don't sleep. I just survive on 3 hours sleep.
oh God.
Can't anymore.
Look, this has been an exciting show, guys. I'm a little bit more excited than normal. You guys are amazing. Thank you for hanging out with me. You know, every show that we do here on the channel is always a pleasure. But, you know, the time that you guys give to everybody, not only myself and to each other here on the show, it's everybody in the chat, guys. It's the people that watch the views. You know, some of our shows get 100 views, 120, 130. Some of our shows are in the thousands. So,
yeah, we're grateful that anyone wants to hear what we've got to say and wants to go back and watch them, because at the end of the day, we do it because we enjoy it. So, you know.
Love it.
Yeah.
It's it's a big part.
100%.
Yeah.
And for that note, if anyone's watching this and they haven't subscribed, please do so. That'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
Subscribe,
like,
to
share,
our page,
tag, and subscribe. Yes.
and our friends too on our channel's page. Please go and subscribe to everybody there. As I said to Todd yesterday, and we keep saying on this channel, it doesn't cost you anything to hit that bloody subscribe button, but it helps the channel that you subscribe to. Easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are within 500 or so views of 250,000 views. 250,000 views, gentlemen. So watch out for that. Should hit that in the next couple of week or so. So it'll be fantastic. So there.
Amazing. And yeah, we're on the topic of Tom Dowd and whatnot today. So I think happy birthday, George Harrison, because we forgot to mention that.
Hey, well done. Good work.
Yeah, happy birthday, George Harrison.
We love Georgie.
Georgie. Yeah.
Yes. How do we miss it?
Oh,
Look at everything.
Rock Professor, thank you. I'm going to get you to do a shout out. Thank you, Alan. The support Alan gives us weekly.
Yeah.
Thank you. We never take that for granted. Thank you.
Yeah. So great to see Great Vanzini. Great to see you, man. Hope you're good, and lovely to see you in the chat. Dropping by, it's fantastic. Hugh Caldwell, again, great supporter. Ellen, of course, great supporter. Todd, thanks Todd for dropping by. Some great
Cheers,
comments
bro.
there. And anyone who agrees with me is a great commenter.
Oh.
Who else we got? Got Great Mazzini. Back up. We've got Janice Lala as well. Thanks, Janice, for dropping by. It's good to see you. Arvin, of course, dropping by regularly. Hugh. Who else do we have a bit further up? Sorry, guys. Holly Lewis as well. Holly's gone to bed sensibly. It's the middle of the night in Tulsa. That's probably a song. But, I don't know what it is. Yeah, you can have an opening line like that from me for free. Quentin James as well. Quentin, hope you're good. Good. Sorry, guys. Christopher Live Sour as well. Fantastic. Chris, thanks for dropping by. Brad Cook, Tim Thomas as well. Tim, good to see you. Gret Zeppelin as well. Good to see you too. I think that's probably everyone. I've got to the top. So thanks all for dropping by, and we'll see you next week for part 2 of this fantastic record. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. You guys are awesome. Bye-bye.
Take care. Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye. Keep waving.
Where's this bloody video? There it is.